Hi, I'm Nez. I want to tell you a bit about my somewhat unorthodox way of producing music. What you hear today is shaped by my journey, which has never taken me to a professional studio at all. Back in the mid to late 90s, along with friends, I'd work on mixtapes, do the whole cassette DJ thing. I still have some of these tapes today, though they are not good, certainly not for public listening. They do, however, make for good samples, which I've used on the odd later track. In the 90s with friends, we used to muck around with tapes, play stuff in reverse, throw beats in, bit of attempting to emulate DJ, scratching records, it was that sort of thing. In 1999 I got my first home computer, and this was closely followed by purchasing Hip Hop EJ and Dance EJ, playing with loops. It got a little more serious in the early 2000s using the Making Waves software, basically throwing in beats. It was a lot of techno stuff. Yes, I still have that too. Next I bought a Yamaha PSR-290 and made my first music, if you can call it that. It was very much a case of using whatever samples I could get hold of, including real life samples, cars revving, the sound of crows squawking, literally whatever, alongside industrial sounding drum loops. You could probably call it experimental techno, though there was no mastering involved whatsoever. In 2000 I was lucky enough to join Kids in Communication, Kick FM, and learned a little bit about how to use Cool Edit Pro, which is of course now Adobe Audition. So with all of those things I managed to put together my first few CDs, put on Nez Tuntastic, which is again absolutely crazy, and it's used now for samples, so it's not a complete waste, and of course it was the start of a journey for me. And I find that I'm revisiting a lot of these samples from old backup discs in current productions. Today I use FL Studio, that's my main DAW, alongside Adobe Audition, and I've brought new hardware back into the process, for example the Behringer JT-4000. I've managed to get hold of an old stylophone again, interesting sounds. The process is very much a case of old samples, new samples. I use FL Studio. I also use AI tools like Suno, not as a replacement but as part of a circular process. So I'll take an idea, run it through, extract stems, remix it, add vocals, synth layers, bring it back into the DAW. I find that the tool enhances the workflow. A lot of my ideas do not come from sitting in front of a screen. I like to get sounds from out and about, actually in nature. Industrial sounds are always good if you find yourself in the right setting. They hit me when I'm out walking, so a lyric line, a melody, a rhythm. I'll capture it quickly, either hum it into my phone, keep it in my head until I get home, and that is usually the spark of a whole track. I find that my brain is blank when I'm out walking, and that's where these ideas filter in. The amount of times I've been out walking and melodies will just pop into your head. You think, I've got to get this recorded, I've got to do something here. Lyrics, and before you know it you can pull something together. Different projects that I've worked on take inspiration from different places, so the Southwest Cornwall 1 album grew out of my love for Cornwall and the Southwest, the landscapes, the coastlines, the atmosphere of being there, and I was there in July and August, and a lot of those melodies were put down there or on a train going through the countryside there. With Noctera, the influence was 80s movies like Blade Runner, Total Recall, The Running Man, and the music of that time. Of course, more than that, it's about world building for me. As a kid, I'd draw maps and imagine entire places and the people in them. With Noctera, I wanted to build my own world and put a soundtrack to it, and AI allows me to do that. I can actually build the world on screen using MidJourney video. It's not perfect yet, it's got a long way to go, but I think it's a good start, and for indie producers without Hollywood studio power, you can do a lot with AI at the moment. I'm attempting through the use of AI to create the world of Noctera, which is a sort of Blade Runner-esque cyberpunk fantasy future world, almost like if the 1980s suddenly advanced in technology, still with that 1980s look and feel, but had that sudden advance in technology. So you've got flying cars. Good question. Around 2015 I think I heard Gunship's self-titled album, and I loved it, and it took me back. I've always been a big fan of 80s music, the things that take me back to my childhood. You remember sometimes clips of things you've heard on the radio, and occasionally you'll hear something now and you'll be like, I remember that song. You look it up, it's like 1986, and you're like, wow, I was a kid, I was very small. And I like that nostalgia. I grew up with tape cassettes and parents playing vinyl records, So that sound, that warm analog sound is brilliant, and I enjoy recreating that digitally. I've never approached music in a conventional way. I like using real world sounds, sampling unexpected moments, finding inspiration outside of a studio environment. Sometimes a street sound, a voice recording, the feeling of a place. As far as the tools used, for me it's not necessarily about the tools being right or wrong, it's about how you use them to get to the point you want to arrive at. I've worked, say, in the past with a Yamaha keyboard with half broken old software and samples, now with cutting edge AI alongside FL Studio, alongside Audition. The common thread, and I think this probably applies to anybody, is the creativity behind it, finding the elements of music in maybe unexpected places and shaping them into something that you hope people can connect with. I don't have a lot of space. I love a minimal setup, so the smaller footprint I can work from, the better. My gaming laptop handles music well, alongside hardware synths, actual recording in public. As part of the process, I write all the lyrics. I've always been into creative writing, writing poetry, writing songs. I've done that over the years. The one issue I do have is that I can't sing, and believe me, you wouldn't want to hear my voice on a track, so I do use AI vocalists. Flying cars, towering skyscrapers with their video screens, and neon lights everywhere you look. Just that whole 80s and early 90s to a degree, that whole aesthetic. Soft synths like the Tel Noisemaker, Dex, which is essentially like having a Yamaha DX7. I run Synpress FM on my phone. I find there's a lot you can do today without having a massive setup. Probably the most important thing for me is having fun. If you don't enjoy doing this, if it becomes too serious, what's the point in doing it? It has to be a hobby. Things really have gone full circle. I am collaborating with friends who I collaborated with back in the 90s when we were kids, and I'm really enjoying the unorthodox process.